Hello, hello, and welcome to another episode of Down the Well. I am your host, Elle, and today we're going to talk about homeschooling. We're going to talk about education. Are you considering homeschooling, but maybe you have reservations or fears about it, and so you haven't taken the plunge? Or are you currently homeschooling, but you constantly feel like you're not doing it right? I have a special guest who happens to be my sister. Her name is Liz Black. And I mean, I would just have her on to hang out and talk with anyways, but she happens to be a certified teacher. She has taught at charter schools. She has a master's in education. She's set up multiple charter and private schools. She's mentored and taught hundreds, if not thousands of teens. She's a homeschooling parenting coach through Elle Learning, her business, and she teaches and writes college curriculum. We are going to give some clear guidance today to the parent who is down the proverbial well and giving their kids the best education possible. Whether you are that parent with questions and concerns about homeschooling, or you are in the thick of it and you're feeling overwhelmed and wondering, just trying to figure out what success even looks like when homeschooling, today's episode is for you. So excited to have you here today, Solicitor Liz. Tell me, did I miss anything in that intro?
Oh, thanks, Sis. It's so good to be with you. It's so fun. We've had years of talking education, and it's always like such a joy, and love what you're doing with this podcast as well. And so, that's a great covering of the background there. I think I was just born to be an educator, and I know other educators. Many of us have a sense of a call to education. I feel lucky that I've been able to be in lots of different settings that have helped me to really understand that broader picture of what's happening in the education world now. And it's a very exciting time in education, so it's a good time to be in it.
It certainly is. Well, to give you a little bit about my background, not for you, Liz, because you've been on the phone with me a lot over the years and in person trying to help me figure out what to do with my 4 kids. My kids, as many of you know, are 8, 11, 14, and 16. And we have done it all. We've done charter schools. We've done public schools. We've done total homeschool. We have ended up with a kind of hybrid model right now. Our kids are all doing a little bit different things, co-ops and charter schools and all the things, which sounds overwhelming and like a lot of crazy. And I guess sometimes it is, but I would argue that it feels a little less crazy than when we've done public school. So excited to dig in today with you. I kind of want to start just with this general question of like, why do you think so many people are turning to homeschooling right now? And what do you see that's lacking in public education?
Oh, it's a great question. It's been such an honor and joy to work with you all on that and other families as well. And a lot of families are doing what you're doing, which is kind of more curating than doing the teaching themselves, kind of choosing the right choices at the right time for the right child. And I think that is one of the biggest reasons why people are turning to homeschooling, is because, we have, and I always want to be respectful of those dedicated, hardworking educators that are in the public school systems. It's definitely not everyone there, but you have those schools that are doing well. And when a solid family is supporting that with great resources, that can work well. But we also have some real issues. So some people are running away from things in the public schools, such as, the colossal waste of time because we're not aligned with actual theory and data and all of that. We started with kind of this military industrial model, including our bells between classes and how we set up our subjects. We're not doing a tailored approach, a critical thinking approach there. So it's really, we're not using best practices in schools and haven't for quite a while. We're also now 18th in the world in terms of education systems. That's a big drop since even the 1970s or 1990s. And we also see things like teachers recommending medications for behavioral control of students. We have a huge issue around public schools are made for compulsion and crowd control in many ways, like the military. We're kind of trying to get everyone through the same system. And so what ends up happening is we're not We see creativity scores from childhood into teenage years going way down. And just the idea that we have these amazing special years that are cut out that we can use to get a great education. And we're getting the curriculum is very watered down at this point. And we see bigger issues too, from violence to abuse. And the numbers are, when you really look into those numbers, they're pretty staggering around sexual abuse in schools and that kind of thing. And this is true whether that's regardless, whether it's the inner city or suburban America, we see these alternative options showing really great results for students. And so on the repelled side, many parents are saying, especially after COVID, they kind of saw into the schools and said, no thanks, I am seeing this and this is not how I want to use these precious years. And then other families are being pulled into these great alternatives that amazing education entrepreneurs are now creating, and we now have the legal space to do. So things like charter schools and magnet schools and homeschooling and co-ops and all of this, where you'll see methodologies like Montessori or TJ Ed or Charlotte Mason or classical coming through. And it is now worthwhile. I think it's starting to become worthwhile for education entrepreneurs to get in there and say, I'm going to make a real difference here. So families are seeing that and saying, I think we'll do Chinese immersion this year instead of our basic state standards.
I love that. Yeah, I agree with so many of your thoughts there of where a lot of the things that you just mentioned, or I would say the main impetus for Jared and I to do something different with our kids is that we both struggled in a traditional school system in that learning environment. I think for some it works well. It did not for us, and it really killed both of our spirits. And it took a long time for both of us to rebuild and find the things that our areas of strength, to reconnect with those and to find those in college. And so we wanted to be able to, we also just really wanted to stay more connected with our kids during these years and having a more home-based education, as you talk about.
Can I just share a quick thought on that? I think you said something so important there, which is for you and Jared, when your education, your formal education starts to pull away from the enhancement of your gifts and your personal growth, that's a problem, right? We have this time to expand who we are in those ways. And that tells us something. I was actually just working with a parent and child this last week, and the parent was expressing how frustrated they are with the fact that their gifted and talented child is becoming literally depressed because he's sitting in a chair every day, never quite reaching his level of intelligence, and he's not, there's no growth. So he's having to sit for 6 hours just trying to find something else to do with his mind. He can finish the assignments in 5 minutes, 10 minutes. And this happens a lot, and it's significant. I've seen kids who shut down around eating, who are having rage every day, who become depressed. And a common thing that we're seeing is I'm wasting my time sitting here, and I would like to learn. I'm willing to learn, but it's just not happening.
And then after a while, I was just, so frustrated and so discouraged, and actually feel like it's because you're not smart and you're not capable. And it's not what everyone's experience was. Definitely mine. It's definitely Jared's, and it had a lot of impacts over time. Coming back to this idea of home, I mentioned it as one of your ideas, is home-based education versus homeschooling. How do you differentiate between the two? Because I think it's really helpful in conceptualizing for those interested in homeschooling, or maybe you are homeschooling, you're like, how are people doing all of this? And the answer is we're not. Tell it. Differentiate a little bit between those two terms.
Yeah, so that's an important and growing distinction between homeschooling and home-based education. And I do think it takes a lot of the fear and stress off of parents when you can kind of reframe it this way. So with homeschooling, you've got the burden of being, and like me and some other educators would love to do this, but you're teaching all day, right? You're doing all the teaching. You're working with your child through their education. Can be amazing, can be awesome. But home-based education is when you're taking these amazing resources and finding kind of the right resource for the right child at the right time. So it might be a young child who is doing 2 days of outdoor school, and then you're doing a lot of reading and play on the other 2 days. Maybe you're doing a bit of STEM education, and the let's say high school student is maybe going to a classical education school, charter school, or has a private tutor who's teaching them the classics. So it is more, again, this idea of curation versus teaching. And both of them have really great outcomes and can work very well. But you have to sort of know yourself and know your child. Also, we tend to look at school in chunks of 1 year, right? Like 1 year of time. But I find that a lot of families do better with maybe 2 years. And so I'll see parents who say, okay, we did this co-op for 2 years and it was amazing. But now my kids are ready to be outside of the home more. And I'm also ready for a bit of a change. And I need to focus on, I'm finishing my degree, or I'm working on this side gig or whatever it is. And I think in my mind, I just feel like it's so important that we also respect and figure in the parent's journey in this as well, and not just say, okay, what is best for my kids? Yes, but if the parent burns out, that affects the home tremendously, and our journeys matter as well, right? So asking, okay, what's going to be the best all-around picture, I think, is the home-based approach. So even if you're doing some homeschool, some charter school, some private school, it falls more under that umbrella of parent ownership around education than a prescriptive idea of what we'll be doing to fulfill that.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, just to give a clear example of what that looks like in our family right now, for my 8-year-old, she's doing language arts and math with me through Good and the Beautiful curriculum, which is what we happen to be using this year. And then we have a little co-op here in our barn. We meet 1 day a week and do some extracurricular activities together that are fun, and crafts and art. My 11-year-old, that looks like she has an English teacher who teaches about 10 minutes away from here with a more formal class, just 1 day a week with other extracurriculars, a really more intensive writing class that she loves. But she's also part of our co-op and other extracurriculars. My 14-year-old is at a charter school 3 days a week and home 2 days a week. My 16-year-old is gone 4 days a week at a charter high school and home 1 day a week. So it's like, those are all, people are like, do you homeschool? I'm like, yeah, but home-based is a better way, I think, to frame that. I'm not teaching all of these subjects. I'm actually teaching only a few hours a week. And I'm finding here in California, we have a lot of amazing resources to be able to utilize for this home-based kind of model. Let's shift gears into some of the bigger, most common concerns for potential homeschooling parents and parents who are already homeschooling. The first kind of area, I think, is around academic doubts. The question that I hear the most is, can I really teach my child everything they need to know? Like, I'm not a science teacher. How can I teach my child science or trigonometry or whatever? I don't know. Did they even take trig in high school? We're not there yet. Okay. What do you say to that?
Yeah, I think so. So again, the options are plentiful. So if you don't want to and it's not your thing, lean into your strengths. We also don't have to hit every subject every semester. I know but when you start to step out of the regular mold, you start to question a lot of things like, oh, we're going to do different days, different subjects. Maybe this semester we do science and history, and next semester we hit the others. I like the idea of thinking about education as like a T. You need a broad education of critical thinking, and then you need to be able to go deep in a few areas. We just don't have to hit everything every time. And so I think that lean into your strengths, use outside options where they're helpful, and lean into what your child's strengths are, what they want to do and what they'd like to do. So no, you don't have to do everything for sure. There's so many ways to do it very effectively without kind of forcing yourself to. Also, I have to just say as a side note, many parents that I've talked to, they often say, this is when I got my real education, was when I homeschooled, I did home-based ed. And so you may be surprised at how much you enjoy getting into these subjects, even if they weren't yours originally.
Yeah, there's so many resources available that you can learn along with them, and they won't even notice that you didn't know before you taught it to them. Will my child be prepared for college or future opportunities?
Yeah, I hear this a lot from families, and there's actually a lot of great success that's happening when it comes relative to college for home-based ed and homeschool students. So top schools like Harvard and MIT and Stanford, they accept alternative ed students at a higher rate than public ed students. We also see that in general, these students have higher GPAs, college GPAs. They tend to stick with college, stick all the way through college. They're more likely to finish their freshman year with a good GPA, which is an interesting stat, I think, because some students go off to college and, things don't go super well. So we are seeing really good returns, and almost 100% of colleges accept homeschool and home-based ed families. So you're going to have to do the SAT and ACT. You've got to kind of keep your own transcript, so to speak, of what you've done over the years. But homeschool or home-based ed students tend to take a lot of ownership of their own education and have a lot of diverse experience, and colleges really like that.
I love it. I love it. What if my child falls behind?
Okay, so that makes me ask the question, what does behind look like, right? So what are your family's goals? What are your goals for your child? Is it a whole education? Is it to get into a certain college or get into college? So you really have to question that, and you're not out of the system too long before you start questioning it, and you're talking with other parents and you start to say, wait a second, I don't necessarily just value the state standards, or I want my child to have happiness, good relationships, all of that. So, you have to look at their strengths and ask where those are best measured. Are they measured by our certain, our standards that we have in the public schools? For many students, that's not the best yardstick. So you and Jared have been incredibly successful, but you did not necessarily align with those measurements. It was a waste of your time in many ways. And so that's a big, question. What does it mean to fall behind? And I think it is worth asking that question.
Yeah, I love that. Can you touch on, I know that you use the methodology of the phases of education mostly in your coaching. It's something I love as well. Could you just briefly touch on each of the phases of learning that you use when coaching parents? I think this is incredibly helpful when approaching academic doubts around homeschooling.
Yes. So I love the phases of learning. They were articulated by Oliver DeMille. He studied people who had affected change, looked at their education, and created sort of these buckets of educational development. And you'll see they align very well with brain development, research, and other approaches that are phased, like Montessori and Waldorf and all of those. They kind of reinforce each other, which tells you there's some real truth there. So I think often in education, we look at anecdotes a lot, right? Like, this worked, this went so well in class today. But we need models and data and ways to think about education. And the phase of learning is absolutely my favorite. I've used it for 20 years. I've created highly successful schools with it and programs and all. And so just to give you a very high level view of it. So from about 0 to 7, 8-ish, we call core phase. And this is kind of like a little protected nest phase where you want to have a safe, secure home. You want to teach right and wrong. You want to teach, and then you want to have plenty of space for play and like assisted family work. And so children are learning how to organize their brains. The scientific method is really happening through play all the time. And they start to form the basic foundation of the brain. And it's very important. Play is so much more important than any worksheet you could ever give a child at this age. And so you want to have a lot of space for that. Then they move into what we call the love of learning phase around, 7-ish to 10, 12-ish. And this is a time that is all about trying things on. So the brain is doing what we call synaptic pruning, which means it's going to get rid of all the connections it doesn't use. And so you want the child to be able to touch lots of things, lots of, like we call it, nutrient-rich rich learning here. So I think of it as like a farmer's market. Like if you've set a child out to just go explore, they might spend 5 minutes at the jelly stand and 2 minutes at the soap stand, smelling everyone or whatever. But it's going to kind of go align with who they are and in their development. And so it's a powerful time, but we have to give choices. And, it's not totally unstructured or anything, but we want to give lots of variety in this time. That prepares the brain for what we call scholar phase, which sort of you have like a pre-scholar phase, 10 to 12, and then 12 to about 15, 16, 17 years old. And in this time, students are really, this is what we think of as like the heavy scholarship. So often we give this at the wrong time, right? Like we have all these great ideas about education, but we try and over-apply them, not respecting the fact that the brain is changing. So the prefrontal cortex is developing significantly, and students must be mentored during this time to go really deep in scholarship. And you want a tremendous amount of rigor and challenge for students, everything from emotional to, mental, everything. We want them to be stretched and challenged, exposed to great books. And then from there, we go into a depth phase, which is around 17-ish, till the brain is fully formed around 25. And this is when students are it's the opposite of love of learning phase. They're trying things out in the world. So with love of learning, they are taking that information in. With depth phase, they are putting it out. Let me try doing this project. Let me try being in a band. Let me try whatever it is. They're going to try all the things they're interested in. And you shouldn't be surprised when they pick things up and put it down. But they're getting a lot from that. And then from there, the adult phases are mission phase and impact phase. And the mission phase is where we build families and we contribute to the world. And the impact phase is where we give back from the resources we've gained. And so it's a really beautiful structure. And I found it aligns with everything that I found in education. It's been able to fit in this model well. So I use it in everything I do in education.
I love that. And it has been so helpful where from the outside, all of our educational choices for our kids may look, and our family may look crazy or like, well, you guys just can't make up your minds. But really, we've been following along with these phases of learning all the way throughout. And so we're like, no, we're just choosing the best resource or opportunity for this child at this phase, right? And so that just looks differently this year or next year, or but yeah, I have so benefited from the phases of education. And I think what's a really beautiful thing is no matter what system you're a part of or your kids are a part of, I think that you can still embrace those phases and apply it at least at some level for your kids, no matter what model you're using. Okay, let's shift into socialization worries. Just 2 quick questions around that. You just can't not answer the question. Is my child going to get enough socialization? Are they getting enough socialization currently? What do you say to that, Liz?
And yes, there's kind of this joke that like nobody ever says when you say I homeschool, nobody ever says, what about the academics? They always say, what about the social? It's like just a foregone conclusion that the academics will be better. But that has just changed drastically. I'm super grateful to those early homeschoolers who found their way, and it was a tough road in many ways. And then you had but they were maybe some people were more extreme in their philosophies. A lot of socialization happens in the home, and it's just not so much the case anymore. You see, I know, and I'm sure you can speak to this, but with your kids, they have a tremendous amount of social opportunities, groups, co-ops, extracurriculars. I mean, there are just so many people doing this now, charter schools. that it's just not so much of a thing. I will say, though, that we cannot minimize this issue because socialization is extremely important, especially as students like differentiate from their parents and into adulthood. They absolutely have to learn to work with others and figure out who they are in relation to other students. So it's a critical piece, but much less, than it was.
And it may be actually the impetus to homeschool because the socialization that my kids have gotten in public school or even some of the charter schools, you're like, wait, so we're here for the socialization, but what kind of socialization is actually happening here? Like, you have to ask yourself the question. And again, teacher to teacher, classroom to classroom, school to school, that's going to look really differently. But it is interesting where it's just like, well, of course they're getting socialized there, but it's like, in what way? How much tech is being used? What are they being, Anyway, it is, I think that's a part of this question as well. I would say as a homeschooling parent that you do have to be more intentional about giving them those opportunities, and community is essential. With all the different changes that we've had, a church community that's been consistent, family and extended family and friendships that have stayed consistent throughout those shifts. So, okay, the next question is, will they miss out on sports, dances, clubs, and team experiences?
Yes. Okay. So that has changed drastically as well. In most areas, students can go play sports with the local schools. They have rules that allow them to join. There are plenty of extracurriculars. Home-based education families get more extracurriculars than public school families because they have that flexibility in their day to go do surfing lessons or trumpet lessons or whatever it is. But they can also join with the school if they want that more critical mass or to be a part of that experience.
Yeah. Depending on where you live, some schools here, they will not allow you to be on their sports teams unless you are a part of their charter. I do think they're getting trickier with that, with the organized sports in the public schools. But so many of them do allow that, and of course, there are always clubs and other teams that they can be a part of, but. In terms of logistical hurdles, here's a question I got. I want to homeschool. Where do I start? I mean, I'll just say this real quick. ChatGPT, local state standards, like you just look all that up in terms of like how to pull your kids out of public school, how to do a private school affidavit. It's going to be different anywhere that you go. I think that talking to a lot of homeschooling families, talking to a homeschool parenting coach like Liz, here is someone like that that can be super helpful. Where do you typically tell parents to start?
Oh, yeah. AI has now totally changed the game, right? It's just such a great tool for this. And so, it just changed everywhere. You can't give a general answer, like you said, but it's very manageable. I think you have to set yourself up to say, okay, I'm going to invest. What if I have to invest 10 hours over 3 weeks in this? It's very doable. So don't let that, sometimes it can overwhelm your mind a little, but that part is minor compared to the rest. And that's not because the rest is so hard, but just because it's very doable.
Yeah, I totally agree. Can I work and homeschool?
Okay, that is a great question. And once again, home-based ed, absolutely, because you have all these options and charter schools and different things you can do. Side gig, very doable. Full-time work can be challenging because, someone has to be there managing, kind of working with the child through their day. So I would say, don't overwhelm yourself. If you're going to be working full-time, find some great home-based ed options.
I love that. Can I do this with multiple kids or while caring for toddlers?
Yes. So it is more challenging for sure. If you're just going to homeschool and you have multiple kids at home, I haven't found, maybe someone else can share in the comments, but I have not found a homeschool curriculum that just truly integrates all ages. But there is a lot of value to the one house, schoolroom, one room schoolhouse type idea where you have the kids learning from each other. And there are certain subjects that can be done well together, like history in the morning or that kind of thing. And then you might break out and help different kids at different times. You've got to be strategic about it. And, don't let yourself descend into chaos and feel like you should keep trying. The journey's got to work for you too, right? So again, find good home-based resources if it's not a good fit.
I love that. Can families without the financial resources still homeschool?
Yes. So, okay. Now, if you're in a great state like Arizona, where they're doing, educational savings accounts right now, $7,000 a year, and this is going to be spreading. Other states are looking at it. It's succeeding. That's a great way, obviously, to pay for your curriculum and the different things that you're doing. It's tough because families are paying, taxes towards schools, and then they're also paying for their education at home. But states like California have pass-through charter schools where you can get some extra funds towards your homeschool. But, there are some free curriculum options online as well that you could look at. But I think that when we expand to home-based ed, everyone is included. Some of the most tremendous work we're seeing is with economically areas that have challenges around, financial challenges, inner cities, things like that. We are seeing some great entrepreneurs coming up. And when those opportunities are given to those students, we see huge bumps in their, success rates, reading rates, math rates, all of that. So this is, I think, people try and make an argument. This is not equal opportunity when we start pulling out of public schools and we're not supporting others. No, it is absolutely works for everyone. So let's support it for everyone rather than just for those who can in areas where they can push their legislators towards that.
Yeah. And that being said, I think some states are much more friendly
Yes.
to homeschoolers than others. I was just talking to one of our producers today, and she was saying in Virginia, there are just so few options. But, and so, there that may take more financial resources to be able to make, to find the private school or what have you, if you just don't have as many opportunities where you live. But in terms of the cost of homeschooling, the actual materials, there are so many resources available online now. I mean, Khan Academy is an amazing resource. Good and the Beautiful, I think that they actually offer almost a ton of their curriculum now for free online. Like, it's
Oh my
wild,
gosh, that's
because they
amazing.
want it to be available more globally and to anyone who wants it. So there are so many resources.
Yeah, and that's such a great curriculum option. Virginia is one of the hardest states to homeschool in. There are restrictive laws in a lot of places. And so weigh in on your state.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, last little section here. Personal confidence. I do think this is the biggest maybe hold back for people with homeschooling. What if I mess this up?
Oh, that is such a tough question. So first of all, I think if you're a parent who is listening to this, who is considering these alternatives, you are a conscientious, thoughtful, amazing parent. And I hope you will stop and just feel that and recognize that first. Second of all, there are so many resources, so many people willing to help. Get into a community, get to know other families. They're going to save you a tremendous amount of time. And when you leave the public school realm, as long as you're taking a thoughtful approach, you're almost instantly going to upgrade your child's education. So I think doing it wrong is like, well, we can always do better. We can always tune up and hone things in a little bit more and all of that. But we can't let that be the enemy of giving our children a better education. And you're already doing that the second you step out, because they lose a lot of the maleducation. They gain a lot of freedom and space and ownership. And people are often, the people I coach and work with, they're doing better than they think they are. Even when it's like, I don't know if I'm doing it. It's like, oh my gosh, I can look at your house and tell you 100 ways that your kids are learning every day that you probably can't see. But give yourself some credit,
Yeah, I love how you have said before, or you've recommended keeping good portfolios, good records of what you've been doing throughout the year so you can look back. It's so easy in just the day-to-day, weeds of life to feel like, did we do anything this year? Or we even, but the culmination of a year's work or a semester's work, when you look over it, it's like, okay, cool. We're doing better than I thought we were. Okay. What about the question, will I have the patience or discipline for this? Or maybe you're homeschooling right now and you're like, I don't have the patience or discipline for this. What do you tell that parent?
Yeah, when I've worked with parents on this question, that's when I start asking, kind of drilling down on their journey, right? Like, how are things, are you setting boundaries with your kids that are respectful to you? Are you, sometimes that's the best education and the best emphasis you can put in your home is, whoa, our boundaries are a little out of whack here, because that is just so important to their future, right? So, but to stop and say, maybe it's not the season. I was coaching someone a few months ago, and she's been doing this incredible co-op program for several years. But when we started to talk about it, she's very burnout. It's time for her to do something else, which means that burnout is going to trickle down to her kids. It's not going to go super well. And so some of her feelings of frustration and all, it was like, okay, it's time to switch gears. And so now she's doing her next year, her kids will be in charter schools, and she's doing a year of rest and discovery for herself. And really, all this work and all this that she's put in, she needs a minute to regroup, like a Jubilee year, and to kind of settle in and get back on her own journey in certain ways. And her children will benefit from that as well. It's going to be good for them. And so I think step back, take a look at the whole big picture, and see where maybe that impatience is coming from a deeper root than the moment.
What about the parent who is wondering if homeschooling will actually hurt their relationship with their child? Maybe it's already strained. I think I've told you this story before with my son, where years ago I taught him math. It did not go well. Actually, like formal teaching for him and me, it is not our dynamic. It does not work well. And at some point I was like, Solomon, guess what? We don't actually have to do this. I don't ever have to be your math teacher. I'm your mom. We are going to find another way for you to learn math. I would never be dad's secretary, but we have a great marriage, but I'm never going to be a secretary. Like, I'm not going to be your math teacher anymore. And I think that often that's like, in terms of like, there's a relationship with your child, like in the big picture. And then there's your relationship with your child in the context of homeschooling. And I think anytime I feel a lot of tension in an area, I'm like, I need more support here, or they need more support. And that's just kind of the red flag of like, let's bring in some backups here.
Oh, that is such a perfect answer. And I was thinking that too. There's really kind of two different issues there. One is this just a symptom of the truth about our relationship, which is it's not connected. We're not having a great experience and we need to work on that. Or is this, hey, I'm not going to, I don't want to be your math teacher. Let's outsource this. And I think you just kind of be honest with yourself. And then if it's the former, then that's some of the best education you could possibly do, is work on your relationship together and work through some of that. But otherwise, you don't spend your time on it.
Okay, shifting gears here again. What are the markers that you look for success in a homeschooling family? And what are the things you're like, you should actually just let go of?
Yeah. So the further you get from and I know you can attest to this from the public school experience, the less you care about the measurements that were given there, because you realize they don't necessarily get you to the right outcomes. So I kind of think of it as like, you've got a speedometer that measures things, but what's more, measures your speed. But what's more important is, did I get to the city I want to get to? And so if your kids are becoming whole and they're growing and their talents they're they're growing in their own talents and all of that, then okay, that's the city that I want to go to. So you want to set up your measurement in terms of, are we going to the right city? Are we going to the place that we're ultimately trying to get to? And that will become more meaningful to you in the long run. But in the short term, you often want to know, okay, but also the speedometer, am I going the right speed? Is this calibrated well? Are we doing well in the short term? You can look at everything from the state testing if you kind of want to measure compared to other students. There are online reading tests, like seeing what level. By the way, homeschool students are in the 86th percentile on reading, whereas public school are the 50th percentile. So it shows you there is a big difference there in terms of what they're getting. But there are, if you want to, you can test your kids in different ways. There are plenty of online tests to kind of see where you are. Also, you mentioned portfolios. I love that as a measurement because you'll always be shocked to see how much you did. Finishing curriculum is one way. I don't think you have to finish curriculum. But if you're like, hey, I know that if we do this whole year, it's 3 steps up from what they would have had in public school.
What are the things that you look for, or like that when you're talking to a homeschooling family, it's like, no, this is working?
Yeah. So, of course, there's the joke about how do you tell a homeschool student they can talk to an adult, or they look an adult in the eye when they speak to them, that kind of thing. So, when I'm working with a family, I'm usually looking things like, are they reading great books, and are they capable of reading great books? Are they engaged? So engagement is the biggest measure of learning. So when you're looking at students, you're in the space with them and you're like, are they learning? If they're engaged and you're like, oh, well, they're just playing with these blocks, but they are learning if they're engaged. And so with the caveat that technology or video games or dopamine hits that don't require work do not, they're going to engage you without learning, even though there is learning to be done there too. But are they growing in their own talents and their critical thinking abilities? And so you're going to be able to watch their growth and say like, wow, I can see that they've moved ahead. They're reading harder books. They're passing, we did this program and they came through really well in it. What are your measurements as you've seen with your kids over the years?
I think engagement is probably the best definition for me. If they're engaged, and as they get older, like with our older two, we have kind of redefined it again of like, when they're younger, it's how engaged are they. When they're older, it's how engaged are they, and how much are they in the driver's seat of their education at this point? Not fully, but like starting to take over of like, this is what I need. These are my gaps. I need more help here. Like, and that transition is starting to happen, and then not happen in some areas. And you go, okay, let's work over here. But yeah, letting go of one, comparing kids, like of boys and girls are so different. Their timelines are going to be so different. And then also the letting go of more of those traditional markers, grades are important, but engagement tells you a lot more. Okay, how can the homeschooling parent best meet their own needs amidst all the demands of homeschooling?
Yeah, I think that it's important to be communicating with your kids on a regular basis if you're doing home-based ed, right? Like whether that's weekly meetings, monthly meetings, how are things going? And I think it's important to do that with yourself, to sit down, to say, how am I really feeling? And this really, I think, goes back to the theme of your podcast as well, being in the well. It is there are times when it's going to hit you where there's a transition. Now, keeping in mind that families every 6 weeks or so, there are enough changes that you're going to do little tune-ups. So it's not crazy if you're like, oh my gosh, we're all the time, all over the place, and it's changing. Yes, that's a part of it. But there are going to be times when you're feeling more thoughtful, or we need to make a bigger change here. And some of the time that's because you're burning out, or you need something different. And so journaling, sitting down, being thoughtful, talking with your spouse, whatever it is, to say, how are things going for me as well? I think We're getting better at making sure that the parents are in that equation, but that's all trickle down too, right? So like the feeling in the home, it trickles down to how your kids are experiencing their home-based ed.
I love that. Yeah, I think just letting go of a lot of those public school timelines and standards, not getting too obsessed with those. Um, and also not like if you're hating your kids' curriculum, like find a new science curriculum, find a new,
Yes.
like if
Yes.
it's boring you, like let's mix it up. You can do so much through literature, just through good books, like through field trips, through hands-on, through building things. So it's like be creative, make it your own. And then the meeting as a mom, I think meeting my own needs amidst all the demands, I think that's it's like balancing anything else where sometimes I'm like, okay, we need to I think enjoying the fact that because you don't have to be perfectly aligned with a public school timeline, like there'll be midwinter where I'm like, I mean, not that winter is very hard here in San Diego. I don't mean the winter part, but like but midwinter in terms of just the grind of schedules where I'm like, we're just going to take a week. We're just not doing math and language arts this week. We're just going to, and
So good.
be able
So
to do that.
important. Yeah, that
Um,
is actually huge. Giving yourself all those flexibilities. At first, you're going to be like scared to take them. And then as you go, you're like, no, no, no. We know exactly what we need as a family right now. Love that. And just like you said, getting creative, enjoy it. You have the chance to do these projects and to get your hands on things, do that.
what if you've been homeschooling, but you just hate it? This is the real question. And want to do something else without feeling like you're ruining your kids' education. Just like the guilt is so real. I've talked to so many homeschooling parents who are just like, they just hit different points. They're just like, I don't want to do this. This is just too hard. Or my kid is just like, we're just butting heads too much. Or, all the things.
Yeah. So for me, this goes back, and I know we just touched on them briefly, but this goes back to the phases of learning that, again, we're curating this experience, these opportunities, and we don't have to do them all. And ourselves, we don't have to be the ones doing these. And so it's not that did we check every box in math, science, English, whatever for my 12-year-old, or it's are they getting the opportunity to go deeper in their scholarship, moving from love of learning into scholar phase? Are they have they touched on a lot of variety? Have they had a chance to kind of understand who they are a bit through exposure to different things? And when you can go back to those, you can really see what's important without doing it all. I think there's just a whole lot of fatigue that comes from 1 million resources, 1 million theories, lots of anecdotes, and not knowing how to organize them. And those phases, they just give you simplicity. Yeah, it doesn't really matter and I know some people are very dogmatic almost about their curriculum choice or their methodology, their choice of methodology. But maybe it doesn't matter so much if we're doing Montessori or Charlotte Mason in core phase. We're doing something that aligns with those core phase principles, or unschooling with a tremendous amount of great resources, or outdoor school. And so go back to those and put your mind at ease. But you probably got some unnecessary voices telling you what you should be doing if you're feeling that kind of guilt and stress.
Yeah. And I think it's a long game with kids. It's a long game in parenting and in families. It's like, hey, it's okay if let's go back to public school for a while. It's going to be okay, right? And you've given some great advice in the past of really advocating for your kids in public schools because there are some amazing teachers. I always have said, if I could just choose all my kids' teachers, that would be in public school, be really change the whole experience for them. But yeah, I would love to just go to this last question with you. Thank you so much for being on. So much good information. But for the mom who has fallen down the well here, what advice do you have for her who, we're all at the end of the day, we are just trying to give our kids the best that we can, prepare them for their future the best that we can, love them the best that we can, take care of ourselves the best that we can. But we are going to struggle all throughout that. And that is a part of the journey of that mother's hero's journey. But in terms of education, like what would you want to tell that mom who is deep in it and just feeling really discouraged and convinced that she's not doing a good job? Words of wisdom.
Oh, wow. Yes. So the first thing I would probably say is like, take a load off. Like you said, you're not going to mess it up that bad. You're a conscientious parent who's trying to do this in a thoughtful way. That is so much of the battle. And life is, when we talk about, and one of the things that I deeply love about learning and why it fascinates me endlessly is that when we, kind of back up and look at the big picture, like zoom out a little, all of life is our individual curriculum. It's sort of who we are coming up against reality on a daily basis. And nature takes care of so much of that process if we will allow it and create space for it. And so often I love this quote from Maria Montessori. She says, the child is learning when he forgets that the teacher exists. And to some extent, we're giving children space and resources to learn against life and then loving them and connecting them with them and helping them. I've talked to many adults who say, I was talking to a really successful attorney a little while back, and he's like, is it too late for my love of learning phase? I'm very successful in my education, but I never got to just try different things on. And I'm like, of course it's not too late. Jump in, love it. I personally think that the learning goes on for eternity and we get to be a part of this for a very long time. And it's a beautiful thing. So let's embrace all the light and goodness that we can. Every ideal is also a judge. And so we can choose to walk away from our ideals because they feel like a judge, or we can say, it's okay. I have a right to learn. I have a right to grow at a pace that works for me. And embrace the most beautiful thing in the world that we all love to do, which is learning, and let it be that. So I would just say, I promise you're doing a lot better than you think you are, and enjoy it. Enjoy the special time and the path that you have. Life will take care of you.
Oh, such good advice. I love everything that you just said. I really appreciate you coming on the show and sharing all of your experience and wisdom here. So if you are listening and have questions or want to reach out to Liz Black here, what's the best way for them to find you?
Oh, thank you so much. It's such a joy to be on here and just love the work you're doing, sis. It's amazing. So my website is alcottlearning.com. I've got some great courses there. You can email me, liz@alcottlearning.com as well. I do coaching. And I do have an Instagram page that I am really bad at posting on, but I do get messages there. And I'm kind of working on a book and some other projects, and excited to put that out so you can get on our mailing list too if you're interested.
Love it. Thank you so much for being here. Until next time.